Hey everybody, hope you're having a great day. Welcome back to the Like Attracts Like podcast. I'm your host, Pat Mahan. Episode 5, we're going to talk about why the relationship with ourselves really is the starting point for this and how the relationship we have with our inner world directly correlates to the life we experience in our outer world. We're going to talk about that relationship and how to heal it when we come back.
Take a look at life from a different perspective. What if life is happening for you and not to you? This is the Like Attracts Like podcast with your host, Pat Mahan.
So we actually got a couple questions this week that were amazing, and I want to thank everybody that did write in or message me. Thank you guys very much. It helps me a lot to keep on track and focused and really see what the people who are listening, what they want to hear or what they want to address or what they want talked about or what they want to talk about. And one of them was, the reason I'm picking this one is because it has quite a bit to do with everything that I've already talked about in the other episodes, everything that involves how I learned the processes that I try to use every day. And it makes it easy for me to kind of use examples from my life to explain how some of the things that were catastrophic at the time for me turned out to be some of the best things that ever happened to me, tying in some of the beliefs that I have on how this works to apply them now so that I have the best now that I could have. The question was trying to identify why we respond certain ways to certain things, why we respond to people, why we respond to stimulus, why we respond to negativity in a certain way, why we respond or rebel to positivity in a certain way. What is it? Where does it come from? Why do we do it? And how can we change it? So one of the things that I started to notice as I was going through this process myself personally and trying to make sense of why I wasn't happy and why when I was achieving and acquiring and buying things and doing things that I thought was making me happy, why I wasn't happy in those moments right after, why I was so empty and, did happiness even exist? It doesn't make sense. If I'm identifying all of these things and these places and relationships that I want in my life to make me happy and they're not making me happy, then I started getting on this journey of, well, why isn't it making me happy? Where is it coming from? What part of me is asking for these things that it's getting, but it's not creating the fulfillment in the moment that I'm getting them? And then I started to read and research and see my journey in other people's journeys, taking place, of course, with different people and different situations and different timing and, different moving parts. But ultimately, I started noticing what I believe to be the same lessons occurring. And one of the way that we can identify what I think this world is trying to tell us about ourselves is by how we react to things and respond to things. And also the belief that I have that those are two different things. I believe a response, in my opinion, at least in the way I like to break it down, is that a response is something that I've thought about and considered using whatever data I have, and then I've given my input to based on what I felt or what I thought or what I believed. It was something that I thought about the best that I could, and then I put that out into the universe with a response. Then I believe it goes even deeper, and there's a reaction, which is why do you react to people, places, and things that happen to you in a certain way? And I believe that a reaction is based on tapes. And what a tape is essentially a subconscious belief or pattern that has been repeated so many times that it doesn't need a conscious thought in order to take action. So, example, there were days going through this process, I just had this horrible self-image and self-belief and this value of my worth based on external examples and my comparison of what I thought I was to what I thought I needed to be. That gap was really far away. Some days I would have good days, but some days I would have bad days growing up. And I would notice that my reactions didn't match the situation or action that was taking place in my reality. For example, I would drop a pen in school or at work. And depending on how my day was that day, before the pen hit the ground, I was already ripping myself apart and had already called myself every name in the book and worthless and, the horrible names and inner dialogue that goes through someone who's struggling with these things. This was before the pen hit the ground. So there's no way that these were conscious thoughts. This was an inner self-belief that manifested into an immediate emotion based on something triggering it, which was not matching the reaction that it was getting. There was no dramatic thing that happened that caused me to feel this way or say these things about myself in that moment. These were things that were built up and pent up that I had not dealt with, that I had suppressed inside of me. You basically are winding up a spring of negative emotion and belief, and then these become these things that you have said over and over and over again in your head. They become what they refer to as a tape, which is something that doesn't need to be consciously thought of in order for it to emit a response in your body or in your action. And I think that when we deal with certain things or certain stimulus or people or arguments that touch certain nerves in us, if it's a nerve that's been developed over time, then we react, and we react with these tapes as the basis for that before we have the opportunity to even think to respond to the situation intellectually. So realizing that I had an issue with how I was not just responding to things, but how I was reacting to things caused me to try to find the source of my reaction. And in order to do that, I had to be very, very honest with myself and the voice that was going over and over in my head. So essentially, the relationship that I had with myself had a direct correlation to how I reacted and responded to people and situations and arguments and conflict and contrast in my life. So logically, I try to put together the fact that if I want to have a better relationship with people, places, and things, and experience a better life, I have to address what I believe is the core of my contrast, which is my own inner belief about how the world works, how the universe is, and how I feel about my place in relationship to them. And I can tell you that what I felt back then, my place in relationship to where I belonged in this world or this universe or in anybody's presence at all was not good. It did not align. It did not feel like I belonged. So what I ended up doing, because I wasn't strong enough to look at the voices that were recurring in my head about what I felt, what I did was try to overcompensate for them. I would suppress them down pretty deep as far as I could go. Any hurt or pain or loss or abandonment issues that I had or things that I felt I needed when I was younger, because we all have some scenario that forces us to need something initially so that we can lose it, so that we can ultimately understand that we didn't need it in the first place. So my story was I had these voices, I suppressed them, and what that did was it created a complete gap between where I thought I should be and where I was. Instead of trying to, you're too young in most cases, at least I felt I was too young to really dive into, we don't have the life experiences. You have to get your butt kicked so that you can overcome. You need the contrast in your life. I believe it's by design. Because if every day was an amazing day, then it wouldn't be an amazing day. It would just be another day. If you didn't have those crappy days before you had an amazing day, then the amazing day wouldn't feel good. So I believe that it's by design. But growing up, we don't have that insight. So I would overcompensate for this feeling of lack and all these voices that I would keep pushing down. And what did that cause me to do? It caused me to find people who were cheerleaders in my life, people that felt a certain way. I needed to have certain cars. I needed to have a certain status. I needed people to respect me because I didn't respect myself. I needed to find what I was lacking for myself externally in the world and then rely on that to give it to me so that I would feel good that day. That is a phenomenally volatile life. It's a phenomenally volatile existence where you wake up every day and you believe that your happiness exists in an external thing, circumstance, or the way someone treats you that day. When your reaction and response is based on how someone treats you that day, it's horrible. It's a horrible way to live your life when you need something from someone in order to make you feel whole. So my need to be accepted and seen in the world caused so much carnage in the life situations that I was presented because I could only handle them from the position of belief I had about myself and whether I was worthy of them or whether I needed someone to think a certain way about me. All of these things were an attempt for me to put on a show for the world that did not match the inner dialogue that I had with myself. And that is the hamster wheel life. You're going to be on a hamster wheel chasing the external thing that you pick in the moment that you think is going to give you that feeling that you want and make you feel worthy. So I'm going to do something that if I achieve this, I feel like that will make me feel worthy because I don't feel worthy. So I'm going to go do this. And then you get excited when you think about what this will feel like. And then you get it. Man, you'll attract it like you wouldn't believe. But it's also by design. That's one of the reasons when they say be careful what you wish for. I think you should take that a step further and say be careful where you wish for it from, because if you wish for something from the right place of being whole and connected with everything, and from a place of love and acceptance for yourself, then what you attract, all of those amazing things, they'll be in alignment with your true self, your higher self, your soul, if you will. That will be an alignment that will stay in place. There won't be any conflict or contradiction there. You'll be in alignment with your higher self that has brought these wonderful things to you. But when you're talking lies to yourself and to the world, like most of us do when they feel like they have to overcompensate from things, there's a conflict in how they see the world. They don't understand, in most cases, I didn't understand, that I was talking one game based on what my ego felt I needed to be in the world, while inside, I was believing the exact opposite of what I was putting out there. I didn't believe I was worth these things, which is why I ultimately needed them in my life to overcompensate for that. I believe the universe gives you who you are being, not what you say you want. I don't think it gives you what you want. I think it gives you who you are being. And if you have a belief of less than or lack or a horrible relationship with yourself and a poor inner dialogue, I believe that that's what creates the vibration that attracts everything to you. And if nothing else, I believe that if you want to not be metaphysical about it and you want to be more realistic about it, I believe that the negative thought patterns that repeat in your head keep you in the mindset of negativity, and therefore your mind and your brain will try to identify more of it because that is what you are telling it to look for. And I know scientifically that our brains are wired to look for and find what we tell it to look for and find. So the first part of my process was identifying why I was reacting and responding to the things that I was reacting and responding to. I realized that although the tapes and the narrative of negativity that was in my brain was repeating itself over and over based on my past situations, I had to recognize that it was my conscious, aware state in the moment that was still accepting them as true and still allowing them to come into my head. So although they were created over decades of life experience and being unconscious to the messages and lessons inside of those experiences, the narrative that they developed was being presented in a current moment, in a current state of mind or a current situation or conversation I was being faced with. And I was allowing those older patterns and thoughts to be validated in the moment that I was in, just accepting them as the emotional state that I was in. And then this is the emotional state that this situation is presenting me, and I accept it and I move on as that's life. So what I ended up doing was realizing that no, this is a voice just like anyone else talking to me. It was just myself. So what I decided to do was I drew a picture of a person, the shoulders and head of a person, and inside of that, to the best that I could recall, I wrote down all of the things that this voice person in my head would say to me, all of the limiting beliefs, all of the self-judgment, all of the name calling, all of the degrading things that my own voice would say based on my past. I would write them down inside of this person. Once you do that, imagine that this person is following you around all day. Just another person. It's not you anymore. You've transferred. You're fine. Everything is good. But you are walking around with a person who says these things 24/7, no matter what you do, was right on top of you and calling you this name and telling you this and reminding you of that. What would you do? Would you accept it? If this was your friend doing this to you, what would you do? You would get away from this person as fast as you could. And the main reason why would be because you know that the majority of what they were saying wasn't true. So when you can get into the state of mind and separate the thoughts and the negative dialogue and narrative that you allow yourself to listen to and accept in the present moment, transfer those thoughts and imagine someone else saying it to you through the course of your day, every day, what would you do? Would you keep that person in your life? You would never keep that person in your life. If you don't allow it from someone else, then absolutely don't allow it from yourself. So as we begin to come to a close to this idea, the light at the end of the tunnel here is to know that as you start to dissolve that voice that's critical of you and judges you and keeps you in this negative state of mind, you change the relationship that you have with yourself. And as you change the relationship with yourself, then the relationship you have with the outside world will change. You'll see a very different world as you start to clean up the energy inside of you that is either blocked or resistant or non-accepting of any versions of you in the past. So as you start to really go through that voice and be honest with your story and learn lessons and change your perception on these things that happened in your life, then you will see your experience regarding those parts of you that you've healed change in your reality. People will start treating you differently. You'll start responding differently when people offer an opinion that might be different than yours. When you take the tension and the resistance away from needing to be right because your ego needs to be right, and there's no way that you can allow someone else in an argument or a conversation to win, not because the conversation warrants it, just because there's no way you could allow that to happen. Your ego can't be wrong. So you become a right fighter and you disregard anything that is relevant or important to the conversation moving forward, and you just need to be right and hold your position. That's a very egoic state that can cause so much drama and turmoil in your relationship with anyone. And as you start to be more confident in yourself and your own place on this earth and in this universe, then your need to be right and have other people know that you're right, that will lessen. So therefore the conflicts in your life will lessen. You'll be able to listen to people and hear what they're saying because you won't have this inner need or this inner turmoil going on of allowing your ego to be vulnerable. So for me, I firmly believe that as you change the relationship with yourself, the resistance inside of you lessens, and we change the signal that we put out to this world. We change the signal that we put out to the universe, and I personally believe that that changes what we're aware of, our interactions with people and the situations that we find ourselves in, and then also, of course, the choices that we're able to make in those situations. So it really is the beginning of a full reality turnaround and a big change in my life for the better. So one more time, I'd like to thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in, for downloading, for subscribing. It's been amazing to interact with everyone who's been messaging and reaching out with suggestions and situations for us to cover. So until next time, I'm throwing all my positive vibes your way. Have the best day ever, and we'll see you then.